I need you to hear this story, because even though it happened more than a century ago, if you're listening, you'll start to see the patterns, not in the past, but in the present. The year is 1898. We're in Wilmington, North Carolina, a bustling port town with thriving businesses, a growing black middle class, and a racially integrated community unlike almost anything else in the South at the time. It was a place where formerly enslaved people had built something rare, real influence. Black citizens were doctors, lawyers, teachers, carpenters, newspaper editors, voters. They were shaping their community, working together in what's called a Fusionist Movement, an alliance that gave political power to the poor regardless of race. Fusionists championed local self-government, free public education, and electoral reforms that would give black men the same voting rights as whites. The Fusionist Movement was working, and for some, this made it dangerous. Wilmington should have been a blueprint for progress. Instead, it became a cautionary tale. Now I know what you're thinking. How does a town like that become ground zero for a violent coup? Not a metaphorical one, a real one. Guns drawn, people killed, a city government overthrown in broad daylight. It didn't start with bullets. It started with newspapers, with lies, with fear, and then came the mobs. Over 2,000 armed white men marched into Wilmington, burned the black-owned newspaper to the ground, forced elected leaders out at gunpoint, killed untold numbers of black citizens, took over the city, and walked away free. This wasn't a riot. It was planned, then carried out, covered up, no trials, no punishment, no justice, just silence. And here's the kicker. It worked. No one was held accountable, not then, not ever. This was the only successful coup in the United States history. And you probably didn't learn about it in school. We didn't either. But here's the thing about history. It doesn't just echo. It waits. It shifts. It circles back. And when you're not paying attention, we might not realize it's happening again, until it already has. Today we're going to uncover the truth about the Wilmington coup of 1898, a story of power, propaganda, and what happens when democracy breaks down. We're off the beaten path. So let's set the stage. It's the 1890s, and Wilmington isn't just surviving the chaos of post-Civil War America. It's thriving. It's one of the most racially integrated cities in the entire South. Black citizens weren't just part of the community, they were the community. Running businesses, shaping laws, teaching classrooms, building homes, and writing the headlines. This was a city defying the odds and rewriting the narrative. And get this, Wilmington was home to something almost unheard of in the 1890s, a black-owned daily newspaper and the only one in the entire country. It was called the Daily Record, and it wasn't just rare, it was revolutionary. At the helm was Alexander Manly, a black editor unafraid to speak the truth to power. And he wasn't afraid to write what he thought. That would become a problem. Because the press wasn't just about reporting, it was about power. About who controls the story and the narrative. And in Wilmington, for a brief moment, black voices had the mic. But we've seen this time and time again, this kind of progress. It doesn't get too far, especially when it threatens the people who built their entire identity, their wealth, on the idea that power should only flow one way. And that brings us to the Democrats, the former Confederate elites, the so-called Redeemers. To them, this wasn't a city moving forward. It was a threat that needed to be stopped. So they started crafting a plan, a takeover. Not just at the ballot box. No, this wasn't about winning votes. This was about eliminating them. Step 1, turn the public against black leadership, and they had the perfect weapon to do it, the media. They called it the White Supremacy Campaign. They used newspapers to spread lies, black men preying on white women, Fusionists destroying tradition. These headlines weren't just racist, they were strategic. Every word was designed to plant the seed of fear, to convince white citizens that their way of life, their safety, even their daughters were in danger. And here's where things really start to escalate. A single newspaper article lit the match. Written by Alexander Manly, the editor of the Daily Record, a black man. He printed an editorial. He called the lies what they were, said there were relationships between black men and white women, and they weren't all violent. Some were consensual. And that was it. That was the moment the white supremacists were waiting for. White leaders used it as proof that Manly and the black population at large were a threat. At Thalian Hall, Wilmington's grand public auditorium and political stage, a crowd of 800 white citizens gathered. There, the leaders made their intentions chillingly clear. The Daily Record will be destroyed. We will take the city by ballot or bullet. They took his words, twisted them, used them like a megaphone. Suddenly, Manly wasn't a journalist, he was a threat. And what would come next? A hostile takeover, and it's about to hit like a freight train. November 10th, 1898. It started like any other Thursday in Wilmington. Shops open, kids heading to school, church bells ringing. By mid-morning, everything changed. A mob of white men, over 2,000 strong, marched through the city with rifles slung over their shoulders and a list in their hands. At the top of that list, Alexander Manly. They stormed the Daily Record office, kicked in the doors, set it on fire. One of the only black-owned newspapers in the country, gone in minutes. And they didn't stop there. Black citizens were hunted, shot in the streets, some killed while trying to flee. Others dragged from their homes. The final death toll, we may never know. Some say dozens, some say hundreds. Most were buried without names, without records, erased. Here's the part that really hits hard. The people who were supposed to protect the city, the mayor, the police chief, the city council, they didn't fight back. They were forced out at gunpoint, literally marched out of their offices and told to resign or die. By noon, the coup was complete. A new government had taken over Wilmington, not elected, not legal. Think about that for a second. A group of men didn't like the results of an election, so they used violence to overturn it. This wasn't just the end of black political power in Wilmington. It was a message to the rest of the South. Don't even think about rising up. And the message worked. In the years that followed, voter suppression laws spread like wildfire. Poll taxes, literacy tests, Jim Crow. And the people behind the coup? They weren't fugitives. They'd become state senators, congressmen, mayors, and they were celebrated. This is what makes Wilmington coup so chilling, the fact that it worked. It didn't just rewrite the future of one city, it rewrote the rules of American democracy. And for over a century, most of us never even heard about it. After the smoke cleared, Wilmington wasn't just changed, it was unrecognizable. Black families fled by the hundreds, some leaving everything behind. Homes, businesses, even their loved ones. The ones who stayed, they were silenced, intimidated, watched. The new government wasted no time in rewriting history. They didn't call it a coup, they called it a race riot. They painted themselves as the heroes, restoring order. And the newspapers? They played along, printing headlines that blamed black citizens for the violence that destroyed them. And the worst part? That version of the story stuck. For decades, students weren't taught about the Wilmington coup. No plaques, no memorials, no mention in textbooks. It was erased like it never happened. And for Alex Manly, he slipped away, just in time. With the help of friends, he escaped, first to Washington, D.C., then eventually to Philadelphia, where he lived out the rest of his life, quietly in the shadows. For generations, his story was vilified, or worse, completely erased, just like the coup itself. But the truth doesn't stay buried forever. In the early 2000s, historians, journalists, and descendants of the survivors started digging. They uncovered the old letters, photographs, eyewitness accounts, and what they found was undeniable. This was the only successful coup d'etat in American history, and it happened right here. You see, history doesn't just repeat itself, it evolves. The tactics change, the language gets coded, but the playbook, it's eerily familiar. Use fear, spread lies, undermine elections, target the most vulnerable, and call it law and order. So the next time someone tells you this isn't who we are, remember Wilmington, because this is who we've been. And if you're not careful, this is who we could be again. Do you see echoes of this in today's world? What parallels stand out to you the most? Have you ever heard of the Wilmington coup before today? Let us know in the comments. because stories like this deserve to be remembered. If this episode made you stop and think, even for a second, share it with someone who needs to know this part of our history. Stick with us because we're not done. There's more to uncover, more stories lost to time, and we're bringing them back to light. We're just getting started. We're off the beaten path.